The morning light filtered through the same old lace curtains that hung in my living room for over 4 decades. Gwendolyn had made them by hand, years ago, her fingers dancing with thread while the rest of the world was still asleep. She believed beauty belonged in quiet moments. That's why she knitted at dawn, said the silence helped her create something meaningful. Even now, 5 years after she passed, I can't bring myself to take those curtains down. They still let in just the right amount of light. Not too bright, not too dim, just like her. The house has aged with me. The floorboards grown under my steps, the pipes complain in the winter, and the porch sags a little more each year. But it's mine. We bought this house when I got promoted to chief hydraulic engineer for the city. It wasn't much back then. Paint peeling, old insulation, cracked driveway. But it was a place to build something. And we did. Every picture on the wall, every scratch on the kitchen table, every flower bed in the garden carries our fingerprints. At 83, memories come easier than breath. Most mornings I sit at the table where Gwen used to serve pancakes, pour my coffee, line up my pills, and talk to the walls like they still remember her voice. High blood pressure, cholesterol, vitamin D. They all stare back at me like little soldiers on a white ceramic plate. My hands tremble sometimes when I reach for the glass. Still, I get by. That morning felt no different, until the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Thatcher standing there, my grandson, Merritt's boy. Tall, lanky, with sharp cheekbones and a quiet strength. He smiled at me the way Gwen used to. That soft, knowing kind of smile that never needed words. "Morning, Grandpa," he said. "Brought those seedlings I promised." He held up a tray of young plants, little green shoots poking out from the soil, hopeful and fragile. I stepped aside to let him in. "You should have come in for coffee first," I grumbled. "Trying to beat the heat," he said, grinning. "Sun's brutal this time of day." We sat in the kitchen and drank coffee in silence. Thatcher spoke about the new library garden project he was working on, said the city finally approved the landscaping budget. I nodded, pretending to understand the jargon, but I just watched his face. The way he lit up when he talked about soil, structure, symmetry. Gwen would have loved that. She believed gardening wasn't about control, it was about partnership with nature. After coffee, I put on my old flannel work shirt and followed him into the backyard. I didn't plan on lifting a finger, of course. Just wanted to sit on the garden bench and breathe in the scent of soil. "What are we planting?" I asked. "Hydrangeas, a few hostas. They're tough, don't mind shade. Perfect for this corner," he replied, already on his knees, carving out small pockets in the earth. I looked at his hands, broad palms, strong fingers, a patient rhythm. He had Gwen's touch, not Merritt's. My daughter never had the patience for dirt. She preferred sterile, polished things. Thatcher, on the other hand, grew up chasing ladybugs in our backyard. He remembered the names of plants better than the names of cartoons. "She'd be proud of you, you know," I muttered. Thatcher smiled, didn't look up. I remember her teaching me the difference between weeds and seedlings. Said the key was knowing who belonged and who didn't. We worked, or rather he worked, for a couple of hours. I handed him tools, offered unsolicited advice, and ignored the twinges in my knees. Around noon, I heard the soft purr of an engine pulling up the driveway. Silver Lexus. Only one person drove that car. Merritt. She stepped out, sunglasses perched on her head, heels clicking against the concrete like she owned the world. She waved, one hand holding a paper bag. "Daddy, Thatcher," she said, her voice syrupy. "I brought lunch from that place you like." "Didn't know you were stopping by," I said, even though I did. Thatcher had mentioned it on the phone yesterday. "Oh, I just thought I'd check on you. Thought maybe you'd be tired of frozen dinners," she said, smiling as she walked toward the kitchen. I noticed it then, the way her eyes scanned the yard, not admiring the flowers, measuring, estimating. Inside, she laid out pasta and garlic bread. Thatcher washed up and we sat together at the table. Merritt sipped her lemonade slowly, deliberately. I knew that look. The gears in her head were turning. "So, Dad," she began, I've been thinking about the house. Here it comes. What about the house? I asked. It's too big for you, so many empty rooms. And you shouldn't be out here working in the sun. It's dangerous at your age. Thatcher's doing the hard part. I'm just keeping him company. I just worry about you, she said, pushing her fork around. Maybe you should think about something smaller, a condo or an assisted place. You know, something easier to manage. The house was manageable enough when 4 people lived here, I said. It only feels big now because I'm the only one left. Her smile tightened. Barkley and I, well, we've just been talking about the future, about making things easier for you. Thatcher cleared his throat. Grandpa's doing okay, Mom. I help. Miss College comes over to clean. Everything's fine. I saw her eyes flick toward him, sharp, annoyed, but she said nothing, just nodded. After lunch, she asked to look around the house, said she hadn't been in the attic in years. I let her wander, but I stayed in my chair, pretending to read the paper. I listened to her footsteps creak across the floorboards Gwen and I had laid together decades ago. She wasn't looking for memories. She was looking for leverage. When she came back, she sat across from me and asked, too casually, "Daddy, do you have a will?" And with that I knew. This wasn't a lunch, it was a campaign. I stared at Merritt for a long second after she asked about the will. There was no tremble in her voice, no hesitation. It wasn't out of concern. It was curiosity laced with calculation. "I do," I replied flatly. She leaned forward, trying to maintain that well-practiced look of gentle interest. "Was it done recently?" "I mean, after Mom passed." I folded the newspaper slowly and placed it on my lap. "Yes, I updated it a couple of years ago." "May I ask what it says?" "No," I said simply, "you may not." Her smile faltered just for a second, and then she regained control. "Dad, it's not that I want anything from you." "Yes, you do," I cut her off. "And that's all right. Just don't insult my intelligence by pretending otherwise." The silence that followed stretched uncomfortably. She stood, smoothing her skirt. "I'm only trying to help," Barkley thinks. "Barkley's not my family," I interrupted again. "He married into it, and frankly, I don't care what he thinks." She didn't argue, not directly. That wasn't her style. Instead, she delivered a wounded sigh and excused herself with some fabricated client meeting. As she gathered her bag, her eyes flitted briefly to the fireplace mantel, to the deed, the frame, the photos, measuring again. After she left, Thatcher came back inside from the garden. "She said something, didn't she?" he asked. I nodded slowly. She asked about the will. He didn't say anything at first. Then he muttered, "Figures. She and Barkley were talking about that last week." "You knew?" "Only hints," he said. "But yeah, they're getting impatient." We sat on the porch as the afternoon faded. He passed me a cup of tea, the way his grandmother used to. I watched the birds skimming low over the grass, felt the sun softening behind the old maple tree. "You know, Thatcher," I said after a long pause, "your mother didn't used to be like this." He looked skeptical. "She's always been sharp, driven, practical." "She used to be kind," I said. "Thoughtful, but somewhere along the way she decided kindness didn't pay." "I don't think she sees it that way." "No, probably not, but that doesn't change what she's doing." That night I went through the old lockbox in the bedroom closet. Inside were papers, Gwen's letters, our mortgage history, the title to the house, and the will, my will. I unfolded it and stared at the signatures, at the decisions I had made, thinking they would be respected. But I hadn't counted on Merritt becoming so bold, so entitled. The next morning I woke up with a sharp tightness in my chest. Not panic, just pressure, like someone had set a stone in the middle of my ribs. I struggled to reach the phone, my fingers fumbling with the buttons. "Dr. Pembroke, please." I wheezed into the receiver. He kept me in the hospital for 3 days. X-rays, blood work and more tests than I cared to count. On the final day, he came into my room with that expression doctors wear when the truth can't be softened. "It's emphysema, Ebner," he said gently. "Advanced." I nodded. What else was there to say? "I'll prescribe treatments, bronchodilators, oxygen therapy if needed, but it's going to get harder. You'll need help. I'm arranging for a home nurse, Fiona Campbell. She's good, discreet." When Thatcher picked me up from the hospital, I told him everything. He didn't flinch, just gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Does Mom know?" "Not yet." "Maybe don't tell her." "That's the plan." Fiona came the next day. A woman in her early 50s with auburn hair tied back in a bun and freckles across her nose. She moved with quiet confidence, asked few questions, and got to work. Blood pressure, temperature, injections, notes. "Do you live alone?" she asked after her first visit. "Yes," I replied. "Wife passed, daughter lives elsewhere, grandson visits." She nodded. "You've got people, that's good. With this condition, support helps more than meds." I didn't bother explaining the truth. That the one person who should have supported me saw my condition as a business opportunity. Fiona returned twice a week. We began to talk in passing. She was a widow, no children. Her husband had died in a car accident 10 years earlier, quiet grief behind tired eyes. We shared an unspoken understanding. Life doesn't wait to see if you're ready before it changes everything. Then Merritt showed up again, this time unannounced. The door creaked open, and I turned to find her standing in the hallway, eyes wide. She still had the key I gave her years ago for emergencies. She froze when she saw Fiona holding a syringe. "What's going on?" she demanded. Fiona turned calmly. "I'm Fiona Campbell. Dr. Pembroke sent me to help your father with his treatment." Merritt looked at me. "Why did you tell me?" I shrugged. "Didn't want to worry you." She stepped forward. "Worry me? Dad, emphysema is serious. You need full-time care. You can't live like this." "I have Fiona, I have Thatcher, I have my house, I'm fine." Her eyes narrowed. "But Fiona's not family. You need someone who can make long-term decisions." There it was, the next move in her game. When Fiona left, Merritt sat across from me and took my hand. The gesture was unfamiliar, hollow. "Let us move in," she said. "Me and Barclay will take care of everything, the bills, the maintenance. You can relax." I pulled my hand away. "No." "Why not?" "Because this is still my home," I said, "and I don't need caretakers with calculators." She left soon after, angry but smiling. That was the dangerous kind of anger, quiet, rehearsed. She wasn't done. Later that night, I sat in the dark, thinking about the weight of legacy, about the daughter Gwen and I had raised, and the granddaughter Gwen never got to meet. And I knew something then, with perfect clarity. They were coming for the house, and they weren't going to ask nicely again. After Merritt's unexpected visit, things changed. Not outwardly at first. The house was still quiet, the routine still the same, coffee at dawn, Fiona's visits, Thatcher in the garden. But under the surface, something had shifted. Merritt knew. She knew about the diagnosis now. And knowing Merritt, that wasn't going to make her more supportive. It was going to make her more strategic. Fiona kept coming twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. She'd bring her little black bag, check my vitals, give the injections, and sometimes stay for tea. There was something calming about her presence. She wasn't trying to fix me or fuss over me. She just did what needed doing. And she listened. More than that, she heard. Some days we talked about our spouses, hers gone in a crash, mine taken by time. Other days, we just sat in silence, both of us pretending we weren't as lonely as we were. It was a kind of companionship neither of us expected but didn't dare question. Then came a Tuesday that changed everything. Fiona had just left when the silver Lexus appeared again in my driveway. But this time, Merritt wasn't alone. Barclay got out of the passenger seat holding a leather folder. He smiled smiled his usual lawyer's smile, tight, respectful, empty. The kind of smile people wear when they're here for business but want it to feel like family. "Ebner," he said, extending a hand, "how are you feeling?" I didn't take his hand. "Why are you here?" Merritt stepped in. "We've been talking about how best to help you now that things have progressed. We brought some documents," Barkley added, lifting the folder. "Just something to consider, nothing binding." We sat in the living room, me in Gwen's old chair, they on the couch like they were staging a meeting with a reluctant client. Barkley spread the papers on the coffee table. Forms, contracts, copies of legal templates. "A deed of gift," he explained. "If you transfer ownership of the house to us now, we can handle all taxes, maintenance, future estate issues. You keep the right to live here, of course. Nothing changes except the legal burden." I looked at the paper. The space for my signature was already marked. "You've really done your homework," I muttered. "It's standard practice," Barkley said. "We just want to protect you and ourselves from future legal complications." I pushed the papers aside. "I'm not dead yet, Barkley, and I'm not signing over my house." There was a flicker of disappointment on his face, but he quickly recovered. "Of course, no pressure. Take your time." Merritt nodded, but she didn't fool me. Her silence was louder than any speech. After they left, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in months, Phineas Warren. Old friend, semi-retired notary, the kind of man who could sniff out a trap in a stack of documents like a bloodhound. I told him everything: Barkley's visit, the deed, the situation with Merritt. "Don't sign anything," Phineas said flatly. "Especially not a gift deed. Once it's signed, it's gone. No conditions, no protections. You'd be a tenant in your own home until they decide you shouldn't be." "That's what I thought," I said, "but I needed to hear it from someone smarter than me." "Smarter?" he chuckled. "You called me. That already makes you smarter than most." He paused. "If you're worried about inheritance stuff, I can help you draft a conditional will, one that protects your wishes, but don't let them rush you." I thanked him and hung up, and then I waited, because I knew they weren't done. 2 days later, Merritt called. "Have you had time to look over the documents?" "I did. And I'm not signing them." Silence, then a colder voice. "Why not? They're for your benefit." "No," I said, "they're for yours." I could almost hear her jaw clench through the phone. "Dad, this is ridiculous. Barkley's a professional." "Exactly. He's trained to sound reasonable while writing you out of your own life." "You're being paranoid," she snapped. "We're offering help. The house is too big. You're sick. This is the smart way forward." I held the phone tighter. "At my age, Merritt, smart doesn't mean giving up what's left. It means holding onto it with both hands." Another pause, then she hung up. That Sunday, Thatcher showed up unannounced. He looked nervous, serious. He sat me down on the porch and leaned in. "Grandpa, I need to tell you something," he said. "What is it?" "I overheard Mom and Barkley talking. They were discussing ways to force your hand." "Force how?" Thatcher hesitated, looked ashamed. "They said, if you don't sign voluntarily, they could try to have you declared mentally incompetent. They mentioned finding a doctor to back it up. Barkley said, with your age and diagnosis, it wouldn't be hard to convince a judge." I felt my stomach turn. "That's your mother and stepfather talking," I said, almost to myself. "I didn't want to believe it," Thatcher said, "but I couldn't keep it from you." "You did the right thing," I said, "even if it hurt." That night, I called Phineas again. "We have a new problem," I told him. After a long pause, he said, "We need to get ahead of it. I'll schedule an appointment with a psychiatrist I trust, Dr. Higgins. You get a full evaluation, documented and notarized. If they try to declare you incompetent, we bury them in paperwork." And so I did. Dr. Higgins was calm, methodical. He asked about dates, precedents, my medications, how to solve a few math problems. Simple tests that measured memory, logic, and awareness. When it was done, he sat back in his chair. "Mr. Dorset, you're in excellent cognitive shape. If only most of my patients were as sharp as you." He handed me the evaluation, a formal declaration of competency. I took it straight to Phineas to be notarized. Now I had a weapon, not out of spite but protection, because Merritt wasn't going to back off. The following week she arrived again, this time with Barkley and a stranger. A man in a suit with a clipboard and a rehearsed smile. "Dad," Merritt said brightly, "this is Dr. Pratt. He's a geriatric specialist. Just a quick consult, nothing invasive." I stood on the porch, didn't move. "I already have a doctor," I said. "His name is Dr. Pembroke." "This is just a conversation," Barkley said. "An independent opinion." "No," I replied. "I won't be examined by someone you bring here unannounced." Dr. Pratt stepped forward. "Mr. Dorset, it's standard." "No," I repeated, "and if you don't leave, I'll call the police." That stopped them. Merritt's expression twisted, no longer fake smiling. "You're being irrational," she snapped. "And I have paperwork proving otherwise," I said. "Certified and notarized, try me." They left without another word, but I knew that was just another retreat, not a surrender. Afterward, I sat on the porch and breathed in the garden air, still tinged with the lavender Gwen had planted decades ago. The sky was soft and open. And I realized they were treating me like a problem to solve, a signature to extract. But I wasn't going to play by their script. Not anymore. The days after that confrontation were some of the loneliest I'd ever faced. Merritt's visits became more frequent, but with them came a steady stream of reminders that my time and my control were slipping away. She never came alone anymore. Barkley was always there, quiet and calculating, a shadow at her side. Together, they brought piles of documents, contracts, legal jargon I didn't understand but knew was designed to corner me. One afternoon, they arrived with a stack of papers labeled Life Tenancy Agreement. Barkley explained it calmly. If I transferred ownership of the house to them, they would provide care for the rest of my life, food, medicine, help around the clock. I took the papers, scanned through them, noticing the fine print about court disputes and contract terminations. A lifetime of security on paper, but a lifetime of uncertainty if they chose to change their minds. I chuckled. And how am I supposed to afford a court battle if things go south? I'm no stranger to paperwork, but I'm no fool. Merritt gave me a look, a mix of frustration and pity. "Dad, we just want what's best for you." "For me or for you?" I asked. That question hung in the air like thick smoke. Neither of them answered. That night Fiona stopped by unexpectedly. She'd heard about the pressure from Merritt and Barkley, and she was worried. "Ebner," she said quietly, "you have to be careful. I've seen this before. Families pushing until the elder gives in just to stop the noise." I nodded, grateful for her honesty. "I'm not ready to give in." "But you can't do this alone." Fiona's words stuck with me. I was stubborn, yes, but I was also alone. The next morning, Merritt arrived with Dr. Pratt again. This time, he came prepared with a notebook full of charts and a carefully rehearsed speech. "It's standard procedure," Pratt said. "Given your condition and age, a full evaluation is necessary for your safety." "I have been evaluated," I replied firmly, "by an independent psychiatrist." Pratt's smile faltered. Merritt's patience wore thin. "We just want to ensure you're making the best decisions for yourself." "I'm making the best decisions for my life," I shot back. "Decisions you refuse to respect." Merritt's expression darkened, and for the first time I saw a flicker of anger, raw and unfiltered. "You're being stubborn," she accused. "You're putting yourself at risk." I stood, steadying myself against the chair. "I'm putting myself where I choose, and if you can't accept that, then this conversation is over. They left soon after, but the damage was done. Merritt's next moves were clearer than ever. I wasn't just facing concern disguised as care. I was facing a calculated attempt to seize control. I called Phineas. "It's escalating," I told him. "They're preparing for a fight." Phineas sighed. "Prepare yourself, Ebner. This is about more than just a house now, it's about power." He arranged for Dr. Higgins to expedite a competency evaluation. When Higgins gave me a clean bill of mental health, we had a legal shield ready. Still, the house felt less like a refuge and more like a battleground. Through it all, Thatcher was my anchor. His visits became more frequent, his presence a quiet reminder that not all family had forgotten what love meant. One evening, as we sat on the porch, he looked at me seriously. "Grandpa, they're not going to stop," he said, "but neither are you." I smiled despite the weight on my chest. "No, Thatcher, not this time." It wasn't long before the whispers of a new tactic reached my ears. Merritt and Barkley were talking about more than just deeds and contracts now. They were considering something darker, having me declared legally incompetent. The thought was a punch to the gut. To be stripped of my rights, my dignity, my voice, on the word of those who claimed to care for me but saw me as a liability. Thatcher came over one evening, his face heavy with concern. "Grandpa, I overheard them," he said quietly. "Mom and Barkley, they're planning to find a doctor who will say you're not capable of making decisions anymore." I looked him in the eye, feeling a surge of anger mixed with sadness. "Do they think I'm a fool, that I don't know what's happening?" "No," he said, "but they think they can make it happen. You have the diagnosis, the age, it's their proof." That night I called Phineas. "We need to act fast," I said. "I want a full evaluation, something no one can dispute." Phineas nodded. "I know just the man, Dr. Higgins. He's thorough and respected. If anyone can give you a clean bill of health, it's him." The tests were difficult. Memory, logic, decision-making, but I was determined. I answered every question honestly, showing that age didn't mean incompetence. When the report came back, it was clear and unambiguous. I was fully capable. I took the notarized document to Phineas. My shield against the storm Merritt and Barkley were stirring. But they weren't deterred. If anything, their efforts became more relentless. One afternoon, Merritt showed up alone. Her eyes were sharp, but I saw a flicker of something else, regret maybe. "We need to talk," she said. I listened as she pleaded, trying to convince me to reconsider, to accept their help. But beneath her words was a hunger for control. "I can't," I told her, "because this house, this life, it's mine, and I won't let it slip away without a fight." She clenched her fists, fury flashing. "You're being stubborn. You're going to regret this." I met her gaze steadily. "No, you're going to regret how you treated me." She left then, slamming the door behind her, the sound echoing through the halls like a closing chapter. That night I sat alone with Fiona's comforting presence nearby, feeling the weight of battle ahead, but also the strength of standing my ground. My birthday was approaching, July 7th, 83 years. Not a milestone I celebrated with much enthusiasm anymore. At my age, birthdays are reminders of how much time is slipping away, not reasons for joy. Merritt called a week before, her voice tense but without the usual edge. "Dad, we want to throw you a small party," she said. "At River Garden, 7 o'clock. Will you come?" River Garden was an upscale place downtown, far from the comfort of home. I hesitated but agreed. Maybe it was time to try peace. Thatcher was to pick me up. He arrived dressed formally, somber, and handed me a small leather wallet with my initials. A thoughtful gesture that brought a lump to my throat. On the way to the restaurant, Thatcher was unusually quiet. When I finally pressed him, he confessed, "Mom and Barkley are up to something. Barkley's called a realtor about the house." My heart sank. "A realtor?" Thatcher nodded grimly. "I don't know what exactly, but it worries me. The restaurant was dimly lit, soft music playing as I spotted Merritt and Barkley seated at a corner table. Their polished appearance spoke of business, not family. Merritt greeted me with a brief hug, her smile tight. Barkley's handshake was just as formal. Dinner began with small talk, the weather, Thatcher's projects, but it was a thin veil. When the main course arrived, Merritt abruptly set down her fork. "Dad, about the house," she started. I sighed. "We've been over this." She pressed on. "We've found a place for you, assisted living, full care, security." "Nursing home," I corrected, voice firm. "I'm not going." Barkley jumped in. "It's not a nursing home. It's a community for seniors. You'd live independently but with care." "And sell the house," I said, knowing what was coming. "Yes, it's too large, expensive to maintain. The sale proceeds would cover your expenses there." I looked at them, realizing their plan was nearly complete. The question was only whether I'd agree. "No," I said flatly. "I won't sell, I won't move." Merritt's patience snapped. "You're stubborn, Dad. You're a danger to yourself." I was silent as her voice rose, accusing me of being a wreck clinging to walls I'd built memories in. The restaurant fell silent, eyes turned. Shame burned my cheeks. Barkley tried to calm her, but Merritt was on a rampage. "You're just an old man out of your mind," she spat. Thatcher stood, voice trembling but firm. "Mom, how can you say that?" The storm broke, and I felt hollow inside. The daughter Gwen and I had raised was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. After the dinner, Thatcher drove me home quietly. "I never thought I'd see this day," I whispered. "When my own daughter sees me as a burden." "You're not a burden, Grandpa," he said. "I'm with you." That night, staring at old photos of Gwen and Merritt as a child, I knew the fight was far from over, but I was no longer alone. After the bitter birthday dinner, I knew things wouldn't get better with Merritt. If anything, they'd only worsen. The house that once held love and laughter was now the battleground for greed and control. I called Phineas first thing the next morning. "I'm done waiting," I told him. "It's time to sell, but not to them." Phineas listened without interrupting. "Are you sure? This is a major step." "I am. Merritt crossed a line I can't uncross. I won't spend my last years under her thumb." He nodded. "I know a trustworthy realtor, Sabrina Locketch, honest, fast." An hour later, Sabrina arrived, clipboard and camera in hand. She walked through the house, inspecting every corner with a professional eye. "It's a beautiful property, solid construction, great location," she said. "But it needs repairs. For a quick sale, the price has to be realistic." I agreed. Speed was more important than profit. Within 3 days, we had multiple offers. I chose a young couple with children, reminded me of Gwen and me when we first bought this place. Meanwhile, I searched for a new home, small, peaceful, by Flathead Lake. A modest, one-story cottage with a view of the water and a patch of garden. Once the sale papers were ready, I called Thatcher. "I'm selling," I told him bluntly, "and I'm moving." There was silence on the line. "You're what?" "A fresh start, away from all this." "Does Mom know?" "Not yet. I wanted you to hear it first." I changed my will with Phineas, removing Merritt entirely. Everything would go to Thatcher, my only real family now. When Merritt found out, she was furious. She threatened lawsuits, calling me incompetent. I was ready, armed with Dr. Higgins's report and witnesses to her behavior. She came to confront me, rage and tears in her eyes, but I stood firm. "This is the end," I told her. "The house, the will, they're no longer yours." As she left, I felt a strange mixture of relief and loss. The end of one chapter, the beginning of another. Thatcher helped me move to the lake house, carrying the memories, the books, and Gwen's chair, the last pieces of a life I was choosing to protect. The move to Flathead Lake was both a relief and a challenge. The house was small, just 2 bedrooms, rooms, a cozy living room and a kitchen, but it was mine. Quiet, peaceful, with a sweeping view of the water and distant mountains. Thatcher helped unpack, carefully placing books, photographs, and Gwen's porcelain figurines on shelves. He set up her favorite chair right by the fireplace, which I had yet to light. "It's smaller, but it feels like home," he said, smiling. I agreed. The lake air was crisp and clean, a balm to my lungs. The tension I'd lived with for years seemed to lift a little. But I was still alone, until Fiona surprised me one afternoon. She arrived with 2 suitcases, an old ginger cat named Rupert in tow, and a hopeful smile. "I've been thinking," she said gently. "Since I have to travel so far to see you, maybe I could move in. I'd pay rent, help with treatments, and keep an eye on you." The idea took me off guard. I was used to solitude, used to managing on my own. But I knew Fiona's presence could mean safety, company, and peace. We agreed to try for a month. She moved in with little fuss, setting up her room and quietly becoming part of the house. Rupert explored every corner with a cautious curiosity. Life settled into a new rhythm. Fiona cooked breakfast, I made dinner. We ate separately most days, respecting each other's space. Her help was invaluable, not just with my injections and checkups, but with small things. Bringing in firewood, tidying the garden, keeping the house warm on cold nights. More than that, Fiona became a friend. Someone who listened without judgment, who shared quiet moments by the fire, who reminded me that even at 83, life could still hold kindness. Thatcher visited often, always relieved to see me well and cared for. He joked that Fiona was the best roommate I'd ever had. And though Merritt's anger didn't fade, her threats lost power against the growing strength I found in my new life. Here by the lake, with Fiona's steady presence and Thatcher's unwavering support, I began to breathe again. Life by the lake had become a breath of fresh air, until the familiar silver Lexus appeared in the driveway. I felt my shoulders tense. Merritt and Barkley arrived, documents in hand and cold looks that promised no peace. "Dad," Merritt shouted, not even closing the car door, and headed straight to the terrace. Barkley followed behind her, holding his usual folder. I met them at the doorstep and introduced Fiona, who silently watched the scene. Neither of us expected hospitality. Merritt glanced around the house with disdain. "You put a nurse here. Are you not thinking about us?" "Fiona rents a room," I replied calmly. "It's mutually beneficial." Barkley tried to talk to me privately, but I insisted. "Anything you want to say it in front of her. I have no secrets." Merritt, arms crossed, issued an ultimatum. "We've filed a lawsuit. The sale will be annulled. You were incompetent." I laughed. "Who's going to prove that? Dr. Pratt, whom I didn't even let in." Barkley proposed a compromise, reinstating the old will with Merritt as primary beneficiary and accepting the house sale. But I firmly said no. For me, it was not just about the house, but about respect and dignity. "You forgot who your father is," she whispered desperately. "No," I answered. "I haven't forgotten. You forgot what family means." Fiona, who had been silently watching, gently reminded about my health as the conversation heated. Merritt lost control and accused Fiona of greed and deceit, but I stood and said, "I'm asking Fiona to stay and you to leave." That was the moment of choice, between manipulation and love. When they left, I felt relief, and a silence far more valuable than any argument. After the storm of the final confrontation, a heavy silence settled over my life. Merritt and Barkley were gone, at least for now. The house by the lake felt quieter, safer, my sanctuary. Fiona stayed, not just as a nurse or tenant, but as a friend. She respected my space, my independence, yet was always there when I needed her. Her presence brought a calm I hadn't known in years. Thatcher visited often. Each time his smile reminded me that family still existed in its truest form, not the blood blood ties Merritt clung to, but the bonds built on care and respect. I spent many evenings on the porch, watching the sun sink below the mountains, the water shimmering gold. Gwen's photo sat above the fireplace, a quiet reminder of the love that had built this life. The emphysema slowly progressed, as it was destined to do, but I faced it on my own terms, with dignity and peace. I thought often about Merritt, about the daughter we had raised and the woman she had become. Sadness and disappointment weighed on me, but I didn't let bitterness take root. My legacy was no longer a house or an inheritance. It was the strength to stand up for myself, the courage to choose peace over conflict, and the love I found in unexpected places. When the time came, and it would, I knew I had done everything to protect my final years from manipulation and pain. This was my life, my home, my story. And I was finally free. The morning sun broke gently through the lace curtains, the same curtains Gwendolyn had sewn decades ago, each delicate stitch a testament to her patience and love. I still remember her slender fingers working the needle at dawn, claiming that silence was the best companion for creating beauty. 5 years had passed since her passing, yet I couldn't bear to replace those curtains. They filtered the light just right, not too harsh, not too faint, much like everything she ever did. The old house creaked and groaned under my weight. It had been home for more than 50 years, standing as a silent witness to a lifetime of memories. We had bought it right after I became chief hydrologic engineer for the city, financing it with a big loan that stretched over decades. This house was more than just walls and a roof. It was our history, etched into every crack, every floorboard that groaned beneath my tired feet. I shuffled to the kitchen, the routine as familiar as the lines on my weathered hands. Coffee brewed slowly as I lined up my pills, a small colorful army fighting battles against time and weariness. At 83, my body was a stranger to the man I once was, a man capable of overseeing the construction of dams and managing complex projects. Now, my greatest challenge was remembering to take these medications on time. The solitude of the house was suffocating. Since Gwendolyn's passing, the rooms felt cavernous, empty spaces echoing the absence of her laughter. Just as I was settling with my coffee, the doorbell rang. On the porch stood Thatcher, my grandson, the son of my daughter Merritt. Tall and lean with my eyes and Gwendolyn's smile, he was a comforting presence in this lonely home. "Good morning, Grandpa," he said, his voice soft as he hugged me gently, careful not to break me. He brought seedlings for the garden, fulfilling a promise he made weeks before. Unlike his mother, who visited only on holidays, Thatcher came regularly to help with the garden, a task that was becoming increasingly overwhelming for me. We shared coffee as he spoke enthusiastically about his latest project, the landscaping of the city's new library grounds. Watching him, I felt a spark of hope, seeing the same love for plants and patience that Gwendolyn had once taught me to recognize in every seedling and weed. He reminded me of her in ways Merritt never could. Our peaceful morning was soon interrupted by the arrival of Merritt herself, stepping out of her sleek silver Lexus. Elegantly dressed and impeccably groomed, she was the picture of success, but something in her demeanor betrayed tension. She approached cautiously, her eyes scanning the garden and the house as if calculating rather than cherishing. "Daddy Thatcher," she greeted, waving casually. Thatcher glanced at me, and we both knew her visit was no coincidence. She had planned this carefully. After exchanging pleasantries, Merritt quickly steered the conversation to the topic of the house. "I've been thinking about your house," she said, her tone measured. "It's too big for you alone. Too many rooms are empty, and it's hard for you to keep up with maintenance." I listened, calm but firm. It was perfect when we were a family of 4. Now it just feels big because I'm alone, but it's my home and I'm not going anywhere. Thatcher's unease was palpable, but Merritt pressed on with the rehearsed concern of a daughter who sees a burden rather than a father. "I just want what's best for you," she said. Barkley and I have an idea. Thatcher quickly intervened. Grandpa's doing fine. I help with the garden and Mrs. College comes twice a week to clean. Everything's under control. Merritt gave her son a sharp look and then returned her attention to me. But what about next year, or the year after? This house is a lot for one person. Maybe you should consider something smaller, easier. Her words hung in the air, heavy and calculated. I sighed. The future is a relative concept at my age. I'm living in the present and this is where I belong. She nodded, feigning understanding but clearly not satisfied. Before she left, she asked a question that confirmed my suspicions. "Do you have a will?" she inquired casually. I nodded and told her it was updated after Gwendolyn died. But when she pressed to see it, I refused. "It's my business," I said firmly. She looked hurt but said no more, leaving with promises of an important meeting. In the days that followed, Merritt's visits became more frequent and intrusive. She brought homemade cakes, new throws for the living room, and always found reasons to stop by. But behind her feigned care, I sensed a relentless determination. One afternoon, Merritt and Barkley came together, this time with legal papers. They wanted me to sign a deed transferring ownership of the house to Barkley, while I would retain the right to live there. They painted it as a smart plan to avoid inheritance taxes and ease the burden of maintenance. I refused outright, sensing the trap. The signature would mean surrender, not security. After they left, I confided in Fiona, the nurse who came twice a week. She warned me of similar cases she had seen, where families rushed their elders into decisions for financial gain. Soon after, Merritt brought a doctor to the house, a man I did not know, attempting to get me to submit to an examination that could be used against me. I refused, standing my ground with the support of a trusted psychiatrist who certified my mental competence. The tension escalated when Merritt publicly humiliated me at my own birthday dinner, demanding I relinquish my house to her husband. The scene was heartbreaking, a cruel exposure of family fractured by greed. The following days I made a decision. I would sell the house, but not to them. I enlisted a trustworthy realtor, chose buyers who reminded me of happier times, and bought a small house by the lake. I changed my will, cutting Merritt out completely and leaving everything to Thatcher, the grandson who truly cared. The legal battles began. Merritt threatened lawsuits and tried to invalidate the sale, but I was prepared with documentation and witnesses. Fiona moved in with me at the lake house, bringing companionship and care. Her quiet presence brought peace back into my life. Merritt's final visit ended with a fierce confrontation, where I stood firm in defense of my dignity and choices, asking her to leave my home for the last time. Now, surrounded by the calm of the lake and the loyalty of those who truly cared, I found solace. Though my body weakened, my spirit was stronger than ever. My legacy was no longer a property or an inheritance. It was the courage to live on my own terms, the wisdom to protect my peace, and the love that endured beyond betrayal. And as the sun set over the water, I knew I had finally found freedom. Days flowed slowly at the lake house, each one weaving a delicate thread of quiet resilience through the fabric of my twilight years. Fiona was more than a nurse now. She had become a companion, a steady hand in a world that often seemed to shift beneath my feet. Her presence was a comfort, and with her, the loneliness that once gnawed at the edges of my heart began to recede. We settled into a new rhythm. Mornings spent sipping weak coffee on the porch as the sun rose over the mountains. Afternoons when Fiona tended the garden, coaxing new life from the earth much like Thatcher had done in my old backyard. Evenings filled with soft conversation, the kind that didn't demand answers but simply shared space and silence. Thatcher's visits remained frequent and welcome. Each time he arrived, his enthusiasm for life and unshakable loyalty breathed warmth into the house. He reminded me that family was more than blood. It was care, respect, and standing together in times of hardship. Though Merritt's shadow loomed in the background, her threats now felt distant and hollow. I had built walls not just around my home, but around my spirit. The battles I had fought were not just for a house. They were for my dignity and my right to choose how I lived out my days. Sometimes, as I watched the ripples dance on the lake's surface, I thought of Gwendolyn, her hands folded in quiet prayer, her laughter echoing in the breeze. I felt her with me still, in the blooming hydrangeas and the steady rhythm of the seasons. The disease pressed on, slow but relentless, yet I met it with a stubborn grace. Every breath was a victory, every moment a gift. And when the time came for me to leave this world, I hoped I would do so with the same strength I had mustered all along, surrounded by those who loved me not for what I owned, but for who I was. In the end, it wasn't the walls of a house that mattered. It was the peace within them, and I had found mine. The evenings grew quieter as the summer slipped slowly into autumn. The lake reflected the fiery hues of the turning leaves, and the air carried a crispness that hinted at the coming cold. I spent many nights sitting by the window, wrapped in a thick blanket, watching the stars emerge one by one, feeling the weight of years yet the lightness of a soul at peace. Fiona's gentle footsteps became a comforting rhythm through the house. She moved with quiet purpose, always attentive yet never overbearing. Sometimes she would read aloud from a book or recount stories of her own past, weaving small moments of connection between us. I shared memories of Gwendolyn, our early days in the house, the births and birthdays, the simple joys that had defined a lifetime. Thatcher, too, brought life and laughter back into my days. We talked about his plans, his dreams, and sometimes about the family I never really knew, about Merritt's choices and the distance they created. But we didn't dwell on bitterness. Instead, we focused on building something new, a legacy of kindness and resilience. One afternoon, as the first snow dusted the ground, I felt a sudden sharpness in my chest. Fiona noticed immediately and helped me sit down. The moment was frightening, but there was no panic. We had grown to trust one another, a silent understanding that whatever came, we faced it together. I realized then that life was fragile but precious, a fragile thread weaving through time that deserved to be held gently. I thought about the battles I had fought, not just for property, but for respect, love, and dignity. I had lost much, but I had also gained clarity, peace, and a deeper appreciation for those who truly mattered. As the winter settled in, I found warmth in unexpected places. The laughter of Thatcher on a video call, Fiona's steady hand as she checked my pulse, the quiet glow of a fire on cold nights. These small things, once overlooked, became the pillars of my final years. I had made peace with the past and embraced the present. And in doing so, I found a legacy far richer than any house or inheritance could offer, a legacy of courage, love, and unwavering self-respect. And so, as the days grew shorter and the nights longer, I faced the future not with fear but with gratitude. For every breath, every moment shared, every memory held close was a victory. I was ready. The cold settled deep into the bones of the house as winter tightened its grip on the land. Snow lay thick and silent across the lake, muffling the world in a quiet stillness that felt almost sacred. Inside, the warmth of the hearth and the soft glow of the lamps fought back against the creeping chill. Fiona moved with purpose, tending to the small routines that had become essential, measuring doses, preparing meals, adjusting blankets. Her presence was steady and reassuring, a lifeline woven from care and quiet strength. In those long winter evenings, I found comfort not only in her companionship, but in the unspoken bond that had grown between us. I often sat by the window, watching the ice creep over the edges of the lake, remembering the summers spent fishing with Thatcher and Gwen, the sound of laughter mixing with the rustling leaves. Those memories were treasures, luminous beacons in the gathering darkness. The disease was an unyielding companion now, its grasp tightening slowly but surely. Each breath required effort, each step demanded resolve. Yet I met it with stubborn defiance. The house was smaller, but it was mine, and within its walls I ruled my own world. Thatcher's visits became less frequent as his own life filled with responsibilities, but every call was a balm, a reminder that family, in its truest form, was more than proximity. Love bridged the distance. One evening, as snow fell softly outside, I felt a sudden weariness heavier than usual. Fiona was there instantly, her hands gentle but sure as she helped me settle. The warmth of the room, the quiet breathing of a loyal friend nearby, it all made the moment bearable. I thought about Gwendolyn and the life we had built, about the daughter who had chosen a different path, and the grandson who had become my true heir, not just in name but in spirit. The fire flickered low, shadows dancing on the walls as I closed my eyes. I had lived a full life, fought hard to protect what mattered, and found peace where others had only seen conflict. In the silence, I whispered a final thanks, to love, to loyalty, to the enduring strength of the human spirit. And then I was ready to rest. The days that followed were a quiet blend of gentle routines and fading strength. The seasons turned, as they always do, but my world grew smaller with each breath. Fiona was a constant presence, her kindness a steady flame in the encroaching darkness. She read to me from old books, her voice weaving stories that carried me beyond the walls of the small lake house. Sometimes Thatcher would call, his voice filled with warmth and concern. We spoke of simple things, the snow clearing on the driveway, a new book he'd read, memories of my youth. Those moments, though brief, were lifelines, binding me to the world I was slowly leaving. Though Merritt's name was rarely spoken, the wounds her absence left were felt deeply. I held no anger in my heart, only a quiet sorrow for the family fractured by pride and misunderstanding. But even in that sadness, I found forgiveness, for her, for myself, for the imperfect threads that bind us all. The lake froze solid beneath the winter's grip, a mirror reflecting the pale winter sun. Inside, the fire crackled softly as I lay back in my chair, the weight of years pressing gently on my chest. I thought of the home I had sold, the battles I had fought, and the peace I had finally claimed. In those final days, surrounded by the quiet love of those who truly cared, I felt whole. The house was no longer a prize or a possession. It was a memory, a chapter closed with dignity and grace. And when my time came to leave this world, I did so knowing I had lived fully, loved deeply, and stood firm in the face of adversity. The house grew quieter with each passing day, the rhythm of life slowing down to a gentle pulse. Outside, the lake remained frozen, its surface smooth and unbroken beneath the cold sky. Inside, the fire's warmth wrapped around me like a familiar embrace, and Fiona's steady presence was a comfort beyond words. I felt my strength ebbing, the weight of years settling deep into my bones. Yet in the stillness, there was peace, a calm born of battles fought and won, of love found and cherished, and of a legacy shaped not by bricks and mortar but by the heart. Thatcher visited once more, his eyes soft with understanding. We sat by the window, watching the snowflakes drift lazily down, and I shared with him stories of Gwendolyn, of the early days, of the hopes and dreams we held close. He listened quietly, honoring the past and the man who had been his grandfather. In those final moments, surrounded by memories and the quiet love of those who remained, I understood that home was not a place but a feeling, a sanctuary carved from trust, respect, and kindness. As the light faded from the room, I closed my eyes with a full heart, grateful for the journey, the lessons, and the love that had carried me through. And with that I let go peacefully, gently, ready for whatever came next. The last days stretched out in a fragile, tender haze. Time itself seemed to slow, allowing me space to reflect on the decades that had shaped my life. Every creak of the old lake house whispered memories, echoes of laughter, of tears, of moments both monumental and mundane that had woven together into the tapestry of my existence. Fiona was a constant presence, her steady hands and calm voice a balm against the inevitable. She moved through the rooms with quiet grace, her care extending beyond the physical into the realm of companionship. Her stories, shared softly during long afternoons by the fire, brought lightness to heavy moments. She spoke of her past with gentle honesty, her own losses threading through her words. In return, I shared my own tales of a young man building a home with the love of his life, of dreams deferred and fulfilled, of a family splintered and mended in fragments. Thatcher visited whenever he could. His presence was a lifeline, a reminder that the legacy I would leave behind was not just bricks or land, but the love and values passed down through generations. Our conversations often drifted to hopes for the future, to the man he was becoming and the world he would inherit. I saw in him the best parts of Gwen and myself, resilience, kindness, and a quiet strength that gave me hope. Though Merritt's absence was a wound that never fully healed, I found peace in the forgiveness I offered silently, not for her sake but for mine. I understood that sometimes people choose different paths, shaped by fears and desires that we can neither change nor control. The lake outside mirrored the seasons, frozen and still in winter, sparkling and alive in spring. Inside, the house was filled with the warmth of memories and the gentle cadence of care. Each breath I took was a testament to endurance, each moment a victory over the frailty of age. As I lay back in my chair, the familiar weight settling over me, I felt surrounded not by walls, but by love, the enduring, unspoken bond that had carried me through life's darkest hours. In those quiet moments, I understood that my story was not just about loss or conflict, but about the strength to claim my own peace, the courage to stand firm in my truth, and the grace to let go when the time came. And when that time arrived, as it inevitably would, I would go knowing I had lived fully with love, dignity, and a heart unburdened. My journey was complete. The quietude that settled over those final days was profound, yet within it was a vivid tapestry of emotions and memories that filled the small lake house like a living presence. Each creak of the floorboard spoke of years past, footsteps once filled with purpose, laughter that had brightened these rooms, and silent moments shared in love and understanding. It was as if the walls themselves held the whispers of a life fully lived, and now gently prepared me for the transition ahead. Fiona remained my unwavering companion through it all, a steadfast presence who moved with a soft kindness that eased the weight of time. Her hands, both gentle and capable, became instruments of care and comfort. In the quiet afternoons, she would read aloud, her voice weaving stories that carried me beyond the physical confines of the house, back to days when the world seemed wider and the future endless. Our conversations, though often hushed, carried a depth born from shared understanding, both of us having navigated loss and change in our own ways. Thatcher's visits, though less frequent as the demands of his own life grew, were moments of light and connection. His youth brought a vitality that contrasted with my waning strength, yet in his presence I felt the continuity of love, a thread unbroken by time or distance. We spoke often about the past, about Gwen's quiet strength and the values she instilled in us, and about the future he was preparing to face. These exchanges were more than memories. They were lessons and legacies wrapped in stories, entrusted to the next generation. Merritt, though absent from these final chapters, was never far from my thoughts. The pain her choices caused was tempered by a quiet acceptance. Forgiveness, I found, was not about forgetting the hurt but about freeing myself from its hold. It was a gift I gave to my own spirit, allowing me to embrace the peace that had long eluded me. Outside, the seasons moved in their endless cycle. Winter's icy grip slowly gave way to the tentative warmth of spring, the lake's surface shifting from frozen stillness to shimmering reflection. Inside, life persisted in quieter rhythms, breaths measured and steady, moments of clarity amidst the fog of fading strength. In the final hours, surrounded by the quiet hum of the house and the gentle presence of those I trusted, I found a profound stillness. It was not the silence of absence, but the fullness of completion, a closing of a chapter that had been written with love, resilience, and unwavering dignity. As the last light dimmed, I felt a deep gratitude for the life I had lived, the battles I had fought, the love I had known, and the peace I had finally found. With a heart unburdened and a spirit at rest, I closed my eyes and surrendered to the next journey, carried forward on the legacy of those who came before and those who would carry my memory onward. The house, once vibrant with the laughter and footsteps of a full family, now rested in a peaceful silence. The memories lingered in every corner: the worn kitchen table where Gwen served breakfast, the garden where Thatcher had planted seedlings with hopeful hands, the quiet porch where I had watched sunsets slip beneath the mountains. These were not just rooms and walls. They were a living testament to a life filled with love, struggle, and resilience. Fiona's steady presence was a blessing I never anticipated. Her quiet companionship became a thread of comfort woven through the days and nights. She understood without words the moments when I needed her close, and the times when solitude was my only refuge. Her stories of loss and survival mirrored my own, creating a bridge of shared understanding across the silence. Thatcher's visits, though less frequent as his life moved forward, remained a beacon of hope and continuity. His youthful spirit rekindled the warmth that once filled these halls. Together, we spoke of the past, not with bitterness but with a gentle reverence, and of the future, a future he would face carrying the values and strength passed down through generations. Though Merritt was absent from this final chapter, her memory was a quiet presence. Forgiveness softened the sharp edges of disappointment, allowing me to release the burden of resentment. In doing so, I found peace, peace not tied to the walls I left behind but rooted in the choices I made and the love I held. As the seasons turned, the lake mirrored the cycles of life, frozen stillness giving way to shimmering spring waters, the world renewing itself even as my time waned. Inside, the warmth of the fire and the gentle care of those around me filled the space with quiet dignity. When the final moment came, it was not marked by fear or regret but by a deep, abiding calm. Surrounded by memories, by love, and by the enduring spirit of those who mattered most, I closed my eyes with gratitude. My story, with all its trials and triumphs, was complete. And in that completeness, I found my peace. As the last breath settled quietly within me, the world outside carried on. The gentle lapping of the lake against the shore, the whisper of the wind through the trees, the slow turning of the seasons. But within the walls of that small lake house, a life's journey reached its natural end. I had fought to protect my dignity, to hold on to what was truly mine, not the bricks and mortar but the love, the memories, and the strength of spirit that no one could take away. I had faced betrayal and loss, but also found loyalty, kindness, and the courage to stand firm in my truth. My legacy was not written in deeds or wills, but in the quiet moments of compassion and the bonds that outlast time. It lived in Thatcher's steady heart, in Fiona's gentle care, and in every whispered memory of Gwendolyn's laughter. And as the light faded from my eyes, I was at peace, knowing I had lived fully, loved deeply, and left this world with grace. My story ends here, but the love I carried will never fade.